Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 is one of the best RPGs ever made and is one of my favourite games of all time. It's a game with an overwhelming amount of content, and on average for a completion run it will take you about 90 hours. But I decided to attempt something completely ludicrous and see if I can 100% the Star Wars game in just 24 hours. And just to clarify what that means I've got to unlock every achievement, I've got to complete every quest at least once, convert everyone that can be a Jedi into a Jedi, and also finish all side activities. That includes swoop racing and Berserk. And to make things just a little bit harder, I can't even use any form of exploits. I've got to play the game as normal, so I can't just skip fights and run past them, and I have to just do completely everything that's in the game. But from the boring rules being done, I get to move on to something even more boring, the prologue. Since everyone skips a prologue, it was a bit weird to actually be playing it, but this just took about 10 minutes of wandering around with T3 until I can eventually just go to Peragus and play as my main character. And also with the achievement down, I don't have to play the prologue in my next run. See, you may have realised, there are achievements for both light side and dark side, and obviously I can only get one per playthrough, which means in the 24 hours I'm going to have to beat the game at least twice, once on light side and once on dark side. Since my last challenge video I played as a light side character, I decided I was going to do dark side first, but I also think playing as dark side will go a bit quicker, so it'll probably help me out in the long run. And for the most part, Peragus will play exactly as normal. I will go to Kreia and insult her for some easy dark side points and another achievement, work my way towards Dantooine and then do T3 section. I then work my way through the bowels of the Peragus mining facility and then meeting this completely friendly droid that I'm sure isn't going to be hostile.
Greetings. It is a pleasure to see you alive!
And then I get to the joys of watching Harbinger dock for over 2.5 minutes, which is again a giant time sink. However, once past that, I actually have to do the dormitory section and collect the data pads and just wrap up those quests, because again, I have to 100% this, and if I do it now, I don't have to do it later. Once that's done, I collect my companions. I then kill the HK-50 droid and collect his organs because I'm going to need him if I'm going to build HK-47. The Harbinger goes a lot better than I thought it would, considering I'm actually built this time, and Kreia for once is actually useful in this area, so naturally as a reward I send her to go die. But with that done, I collect T3M4 and make my way to the Ebon Hawk to do the turret section, because if you flawless the turret section, you get another achievement. And with that, when I'm leaving Peragus, I shoot the asteroids myself to net myself one more achievement, which is just destroying the facility yourself for the dark side run of it, and then that's Peragus done in about an hour and a half. And I think that's pretty good, considering I had to go out of my way to do a bunch of other miscellaneous tasks that normally you just wouldn't do. But now I get to do my favourite planet of Telos, which if you don't know, spoiler, I absolutely hate. I think it drags a lot in a normal run, so having to do everything here is absolutely soul-crushing to me. But of course, like every Telos run, we start it by beating a man to death and then getting put in the biggest apartment in London. I then reject the Euphorian's phone call because this is a dark side run and immediately side with Zerka. On my way out, I kill this random man who wouldn't let me steal all his stuff, so naturally this other man who saw me commit the crime asked me to save his girlfriend. Next we head over to Gren to collect all the bounty quests before continue the main storyline, and I steal the droid for Zerka, like I said, dark side playthrough. After that, I go to the Cantina, which is where I was expecting to lose a lot of time, but it actually doesn't go as bad as I thought. I beat the woman at Berserk, and I also do the achievement for winning a full round of Berserk with a full board. Spoiler alert, this was actually a giant waste of time because I do that a lot naturally later on, so wasting 5 to 10 minutes doing it and forcing it here was a mistake. The second issue was trying to become the swoop champion. I just couldn't quite get the timing down because I couldn't quite get the track, so it took me about 10 minutes here to do that as well, and it cost me quite a lot of credits. Since I'm with Zerka, I have to do Lux's missions instead of going straight into the Exchange's compound, which obviously wastes about another 5 minutes. But before I leave, I actually enslaved a dancer girl I was asked to save because obviously I'm a bad person. But naturally we detour to killing Cthulhu because you have to do that if you're doing the dark side playthrough before wrapping up the main quest. Before I leave Telos though, I do actually finish up the smuggling missions just for some more dark side points and some credits, even though it may have been a bit out of my way. The Telos service plays out as usual. I kill the bounty hunters to finish off their quests and push through the area like normal until I meet my favourite NPC, and if you've ever done the light side you will know why killing him is actually an act of mercy. He is so goddamn buggy. But then I clear out the military base, which is the same as always, but at the polar region I take out the HK droids again for their precious organs and enter the academy, where for some reason my character was walking really slow. Before wrapping up the polar region though, I complete the battle circles to get that achievement, which is always a pain, but it does get me, as I said, that achievement. And with that, Telos, or most of it, is now done in about 3 hours, and that's about a quarter of my time. Also, the handmaiden joins us because I have the party swap mod, but for this run, because I'm a female, we will simply ignore her. This may be a surprise, but the first planet I choose to tackle is Dxun, mainly because I want to recruit Mandalore so I can then do his personal quest in line with all the other planets. Because we have to prove ourselves, I start with the battle circle, mainly because it's another achievement I need to get done. And whilst I'm here, I sell a bunch of gear to push my credits over 10,000, which gets me once again another achievement. But for this run in Dxun, I killed a young Mandalorian for thinking he has a future. I fix the Mandalorian's tech, and I also blow up the hidden cache, which means the next run I'll have to track down the lost Mandalorian and the beast for its ear, since I choose to not do them to save a bit of time here. I do detour back to HK47 because I thought I had enough parts to build him, but I was simply wrong, so that's again a chunk of time wasted. I also complete Kelborn's mission, which means I can wrap up the battle circle to then finish off getting that achievement. And in true KOTOR 2 fashion, I have a bug when building my lightsaber. For some reason it kind of glitches out the whole conversation, whilst the assassins are kind of killing all the Mandalorians, so I'm simply building a lightsaber, getting that achievement while everyone dies. A bonus, however, I only have to kill 2 of the assassins before I get to go to Onderon, so that saves me a good 10 minutes of time. So there is always a silver lining. Onderon starts as usual. I mean, I kill the beast, get some dark side points by extorting this man for credits, and then I'm going to have to side with Vaklu. This means I'm going to have to do a bunch of side quests like removing the captains from all their posts, and in the joys of doing that, when I kill this one captain, the Darth Nihilus scene triggers, which I can't skip, so then I've got to waste even more time watching it play out. I continue on by removing the guard at the tower before continuing the main quest, which naturally leads me to the cantina. At that point, I then remove the final captain to complete the captain's quests, before then proceeding on to a lot more side activities. One of them requires me to beat this nerd at Berserk instead of actually helping clear his friend's name who's just been charged for literal murder, and I also have to become the swoop racing champion, which is actually worse than Telos. See, for Telos you only had to beat 1 set champion time, however in Onderon you have to beat 3 separate times to become the champion. The bonus is the payout's a lot better, and surprisingly I somehow do it quicker than Telos, even though I just said it's harder, but that's simply because I understood the track a bit better, even though it was kind of a bit buggy with the hitboxes, which cost me a run as you can see on screen, but I do end up getting it overall a bit quicker than Telos. There's also a quest for the starport visas. If you don't know, people are always trying to get them, and you can only give them to selected a few people. In this run, I give it to this Sith lady for unique crystal, and I also give it to this alien dude. The main quest plays out like normal, and for me, I declare on the side of fascism, and I side with General Vaklu, so I'm going to get that quest and that achievement later on for siding with him. Before the next planet, I have 2 more things to do. One of them was beating Visas into submission. The second was rebuilding HK47, 1 for that achievement, and 2 because he unlocks a bunch of other achievements later on, but mainly because I love him. Unfortunately, I need to unlock Foresight for another achievement, so I have to raise Visas influence. Sadly for me, that requires getting light side points, so that's just a hit I'm going to take in order to learn this power and tick off 1 more achievement. And maxing out her influence also nets me another one, so in about the 5 hours we've done so far, I've unlocked 13 out of the 57 achievements and done 2 planets, which for me is alright. The second planet I choose to challenge is Nar Shaddaa, mainly because it's the longest planet for me, so I want to get it out of the way early. Naturally, I go through all the fights as normal, farming as much dark side points as I can, before heading straight to the Berserk Den. The Berserk Den you can do without actually playing a single game of Berserk, so for me, I lure a man out to be beaten to death, and then Adson decides naturally to woo another woman in front of me.
I think maybe you should let me...
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Renfiloso ni hekuchupanaret atamakcha.
Like any jealous woman, I then decide to sell my body to a slug so he can get jealous himself. Whilst in the docks, I bring along Mandalore so he can finish off his personal quest in the docks by recruiting all the other Mandalorians to his cause. I kill Lutra to finish off his quest nice and quickly. I also kill the Hammerhead to finish off his quest. A lot of quests can be done just by killing people. By stealing the dead Hammerhead stuff, I can finish Vass's quest really quickly by also knowing the solution to his puzzle. And then I go to the Jet Jektar to sell out again by revealing his real name, netting me some more dark side points and another crystal. With the docks done, I then head to the refugee sector, and the dark side rampage continues. I simply convince a man to kill himself. I then mock a woman for killing her husband, which somehow nets me no dark side points. I gaslight a random woman into giving me all her money, and then she just calls me a dickhead. I tell the exchange to sell a little girl at rapid speed, which they gladly agree to, and then I convince a bunch of thugs to charge into their deaths. I finish off most of Nar Shaddaa at this point by threatening to break a man's legs over a droid, but because I freed a droid, I have to then balance out by killing another one to completely ruin this man's swoop racing career and buying it off for more dark side points. Also by doing this, I then become the swoop champion really easily. I made a bunch of mistakes in this run and became the champion with seconds to spare. But after all of this, I decide I need to deal with the red eclipse, and when I do that, I decide to become king of the slavers and then just agree to sell the man off as a slave. Since it's been a while since a glitch, KOTOR hit me with another one when Krey is teaching how to see if any of your companions are wearing a stealth field generator like Visas was in mine. She simply won't say her lines or dialogue, so you just get frozen in place. This happened a few times until I realised what was going on and quickly took it off her. Before leaving the Ebon Hawk, I decide to make Atton a Jedi because I need to get that ticks off and because I think he's just so much better as a Jedi. He then proceeds to reward me by saying the most creepy line while teaching me how to play Berserk.
Because you'll be right here with me, playing Berserk, where they can't reach you.
The rest of the planet kind of plays out like normal, except here I break TT-32, which I felt really bad for. I then get the cutscene to trigger the Hunha recruitment, making him my companion for this run. Atton once again sees an alien woman that decides to jump right into bed with them, and then simply because he's autistic, he decides he needs to kill them so he doesn't have to have any form of commitment. Jokes aside, this fight took me way too long because I hadn't properly built Atton and his blasters just weren't getting through the shield. It honestly took me about 5 minutes to do this part. And Mira confirms to everyone that all redheads are actually mentally unstable as she decides to just kidnap me. On my run back to the Jet, I have the issue where I decide to finish Otis's quest, which nets me some light side points. The issue being it then stops me from being able to use my lightsaber, which meant I had to do this entire area using basic lightsabers. So naturally I threaten the woman to get my dark side points back so I can reuse my weapon. After running through the maze and collecting all the data pads to complete that mini quest, once I actually pick Hunha as my companion, my game crashes. The issue now being I have to then redo the entire Jet section, but this time I decide to avoid doing Otis's quest so I can use my lightsaber instead of having to suffer through it. But I still threaten the woman so I can get those dark side points. This time when I actually pick Hunha, my game doesn't crash, and I realise when playing as him it's a lot easier than when you're Mira, mainly because of his Wookiee toughness making him a walking tank. I still rush through the area so I can get my Exile win because my Exile can just kill everything a lot quicker, but he still makes it a lot easier to play through. Next is the T3 section, and I start this by setting up a bunch of mines in order to trick the HK units. Spoiler alert, this doesn't work at all, before rushing to the puzzle which I have completely memorised before rushingly trying to leave. Honestly though, the run back to the Ebon Hawk with Hunha again is just so much easier with his Wookiee toughness. I mean, in this fight alone, he's getting hit but he's taking 0 damage, so he can just storm through in something that could easily have been like 10 to 15 minutes. He makes it a really trivial 5-minute expedition. But before heading into Goto's yacht, I decide to upgrade some stuff with the workbench using T3M4. Now this may surprise you, but the units I choose to send into the yacht is actually HK47 and T3. The reason I do this because if you interact with the first console, then you can actually give them a permanent +1 to their dexterity, which is a really nice buff, and it gets that ticked off for me. Also, if HK joins you here, the other HK units don't spawn, which makes this a little easier. But the rest of the yacht actually plays out exactly the same. You get your Exile, you collect a bunch of data pads, you then go to the bridge, and then you choose to leave. Once we leave, we get destroyed. That definitely isn't Goto himself before going to the Jedi Master, and surprisingly, he was the easiest person to fight so far. He goes down in one hit, I think both attempts, and it's kind of trivial how weak he is. But for that mustache, I'd kill him 100 times over. With the main quest done, there is still a few things I need to do before leaving Nar Shaddaa. The first thing I do is kill the droid shop guy, simply because he won't trade with me. And then unfortunately I have to do some light side quests, such as saving Oppo, who was originally on Telos, and siding with the Rodian trader in the Trader Wars. The reason for this is he gets you a bunch of components, unique stuff, which I'm going to need 1 to complete the quest and 2 for achievements. I then follow that up by going to the Berserk Den again and fixing the Berserk playing droid. If I can save one person from gambling except myself, then I consider that a win. The last thing I do is gaslight the Berserk champion into quitting, which gets me 2 achievements, 1 for beating the Berserk Den and 2 for beating him without actually having to play him. Lastly, I collect the Juma juice in order to drug the Cathound so I can rob the slug of all his treasures, so I knock off that quest there. The last thing I have to do is then convince him in order to sell his fuel to Telos so I can get the achievement for saving Telos, and then I have my reason for going back to Telos to finish off all the other quests. And with that, Nar Shaddaa is done. Before I move on to the next planet though, I'm hit with more unskippable cutscenes, which is the biggest time sink in any run I'm ever going to do. And before I leave, finally, I call out Goto for being a droid so I can get that achievement and then pretend he doesn't exist anymore. Dantooine is next, and the first thing I do, surprisingly, is start playing Berserk against this Arthurian. The reason this one is such a time sink is because you have to beat him 5 times in a row, so naturally for me, I decide that I'm going to just save scum it because I'm not going to get that RNG luck. But once you beat him, you get a bunch of credits and you get a bunch of armor components, so it is worth it if you can eventually get it done. However, it is very time consuming, especially in a run such as this. The most heartbreaking thing for me though was once I opened this footlocker, which turns out to be all his stuff, he just begs you not to rob him, and I felt honestly so guilty considering I just spent like 10 minutes playing with him. It genuinely made me feel really bad. Before pushing on though, I decide to break Honhar's spirit, 1 for the buff and 2 for another achievement. I then knock out Mandalore's other quest by having him beat a man to death, which happens really slowly, so no wonder they lost the war. With the salvagers, it's just a loop of threatening or killing them. The enclave will always play out as usual. There are a couple of side quest things you can do here, like blowing up the storage room or collecting the will of the dead salvagers, which if you forge so it goes to yourself, you will net yourself some dark side points and a nice bit of loot. Then I get to meet my favourite companion in the entire game, Disciple. The plan here is just to reduce his influence to 0 for one of the rarest achievements in the game and one of the ones I don't have yet. Luckily for me, it's also one of the easiest things to do. You simply choke him, but he doesn't like it. I guess he doesn't swing that way, and just simply belittle him repeatedly. You can actually get this ticked off before you even leave the enclave. Just put him in your party and walk over to Joron. Simply open the door for him and just kill him. Mikkel will be absolutely disgusted, his influence will drop even further, and at that point his influence is at 0. So at that point I then have the achievement, so I can eventually bench him after I make him a Jedi, because I need to get that done first. So again, once he's a Jedi, he's now benched and I pretend he doesn't exist, like other irrelevant members of the party such as Goto. After this, we work our way to the Kinrath cave just so we can get ourselves a pet rock and once again another achievement. It's also time to deal with the mercenaries, so I simply kill all of them after extorting them for credits and fight Master Rook, who simply runs away. While chasing him down, we run into Conquest, who decides he's actually going to want our help, so we decide to attack Kunda. Before dealing with that though, I cash in the rewards for the farm equipment quest and cash in on the dead salvagers and the Kinrath quest reward. That way I can get all those rewards without them being cancelled out by the main quest story. And with T3 at my side, I sabotage all the droids to either incapacitate people or side with me in the upcoming battle. I then go and exploit a man's dying family for money, that way I don't lose any influence points with T3 M4, but I also get a bunch of dark side points on top of it. When you side with the mercenaries, the Kunda fight is very straightforward, mainly because you do have the military power. The most surprising thing here was Zeron was actually super strong. Like, he was genuinely one of the hardest people I've had to fire. Even in the background, he's in a 10v1 and he's still swinging pretty well. But then we have to deal with Master Rook, who is actually quite a bit stronger here than he was in the cave, even though I still think he's weaker than Zeron was about 10 seconds ago. The issue with him is that his force heal just keeps buffing him, so he drags out the fight really long. But eventually, when I get him to stop healing, I do just one-tap him for most of his health, so he just dies. But with that, Kunda is over. I simply extort Conquest for more credits, and as retaliation, he decides to go torture a woman to death. I then bump into more HK droids, but luckily for me, these are the droids that will then trigger the factory quest later on, which I need to do. At this point, I'm now about 10 hours into my run, meaning I've got about 2 hours left to finish the dark side playthrough if it's going to be a 50-50 split. However, I am expecting this side to take longer because I'll be doing more quests, so I can live with it if it overruns by a little margin. Before switching to the next planet, I then decide to loop back to Telos so I can finish off some quests. I talk to Gren so I can sell them fuel to round off that achievement, and I also cash in on a bunch of bounties and finish off the other bounties I hadn't quite started yet. Before leaving, I also cash in on my dancer's profits as her boyfriend watches like a little cuck. But with that little detour out of the way, the clock is ticking and I need to get Onderon done. On my return to Dxun, I waste a bunch of time running to the Lost Mandalorian because I was trying to get some influence, but it turns out he doesn't spawn on your return visit. With wasting another 10 to 15 minutes, I then decide to progress the main quest by dealing with the Sith tomb. The tomb plays out as it normally does, you just kill a bunch of units and I go to all the puzzles which I know the answers to because I'm a giant nerd. You also get these pools of dark side you can bask in to boost your power if you're dark side, and you can fight against it if you're light side. Either way you will boost your strength. But the tomb ends as it always does, with me killing the Sith Lords and looting the entire tomb for its valuables. After that, we then go to the final battle on Onderon. On this run, I decide to bring HK-47 and Kreia, mainly because HK thrives on Darkside Carnage, and Kreia, you're forced to take her. As a side note, I've always preferred General Vaklu's storm to the palace. I just think it's a better structured story than the light side one of just kind of defending it. And I also see no issues with pro-fascism here. But the palace plays out as usual. You run to the east side and the west side before progressing to the throne room. I love the battle meditation scene here, so I always get that force power just so I can have it play out. The Master Kafar fight is one of 2 rounds. You fight him for full health once, he then gets back up, you take half his health to learn the form, and then on the 3rd round I decide to force choke him to live out my kinks. But as he's choking, I slap him around the head, and that's the last Jedi Master done, so I can say I've killed all the Jedi Masters for that achievement as well. Naturally, I see a woman fighting Vaklu and instantly go into territorial mode and kill her myself. Ain't no one gonna touch my man but me. But it's officially locked in the Vaklu ending, which secures me another achievement, and at this point I've unlocked 27 achievements in about 11 hours. Before I go to the final planet, I have to loop back to Nar Shaddaa to finish the Rodian trade quest. This allows me to buy HK's extra component and unlocking one more achievement, and I somehow see the most terrifying line in this entire game.
We must always think of the children. The littlest ones always suffer in war.
Korriban is the last planet on this run, and it is one I think will be the quickest, mainly because there's the least to do here. But the first thing I do is loot this random corpse to trigger once again another achievement and to get the XP. Once again, you go into the Sith Academy as usual and you get an achievement just for walking in, so that's great for me. After that, I just flawless the Sith test, which I know the answers to, and we collect the charges to blow up the sealed door. This means I've done the sealed door on this run, which means I've got to do Dxun on the next one. Then we go and fight Darth Sion. The issue is when we try to escape, the game crashes, which means I have to go do it again. It'd been a few hours, so I should have expected a crash to occur. However, on my second attempt and I actually get to leave, I get another achievement. The last thing to do on Korriban is enter the cave and enter Ludo Kresh's tomb, which is just doing a bunch of different visions from your past, present and future. And since this is dark side, it's very easy. Darth Malak I just one tap, and for the second part I just want all the Republicans to go and die. The dark side is the Kreia fight, so I simply just choose to turn on Kreia, and again I just simply one tap her. Walking into the room, then I have to kill myself, and then I have to kill Darth Revan. This went pretty easy for me, I can't lie. However, with Korriban complete, I checked my time and I'm about 12 hours in, which means I'm officially behind schedule. But like I said, this should be my longer playthrough since the next one shouldn't require me to do side quests, so I'm hoping the pace will balance out in the end. On the way to the enclave, I realise my persuasion skill has hit 30, which nets me another achievement. I find it quite ironic, I get the persuasion achievement and then get betrayed by the Queen of Persuasion and Manipulation herself, Kreia, who simply stabs herself so I become crippled before then wiping my entire team with a simple move. Considering she was going to kill these Jedi Masters anyway, she seems to have taken it pretty personally. But then we get to see Sion watching a hologram of us like we're some little guilty pleasure, before I then get thrown into the first surprise of this run. Since I have the party swap mod and have Handmaiden, the game forced me to do the Handmaiden fight with the sisters, which I wasn't expecting since she's still level 6, because obviously I've not touched her. So I quickly had to throw gear on her, level her up as a soldier, and really struggle through the first part of the fight with her sisters. Naturally, the Atris part I always find easier, so that goes well until she decides to just start torturing me. But at that point the exile comes in and my exile's built, so she absolutely slaps Atris even quicker and I kill her because dark side points. Now the one part that the restored content mod gives you is the HK factory, which I really like as an area. The issue with it in this 24-hour challenge is it's an absolute time sink. I won't lie, this area took me about an hour, and that's just because the HK droids take forever to kill. I'm in no danger of dying, but I can't run past them, so I've slowly got to whittle them down, and it just takes a really long time to do. The good thing is I get XP from it, and the even better part is I won't have to do this in my next run, so that's always a plus, but this was an hour I couldn't really afford to lose. The Telos invasion again plays that like normal. You just work your way through. If you're dark side, you kill the Onderon soldier. If you're light side, you save him, and you then board the Ravager. On the Ravager, Visas decides she's going to go full revenge mode when she enters her cell and becomes fully dark side. Nihilus then takes a lot longer to kill than I'd like. He takes me about 5 to 10 minutes, but once he's dead, it grabs me the achievement for killing him, but it also gets you the achievement for getting his mask. You just tell Visas to grab the mask and she'll give it to you, which gives you the achievement and a nice boost in force points. On my way out the Ravager, I bump into Make Onderon Great Again man, who I kill again for more dark side points. Also, during this entire area, I did level up, so all my companions have the necessary skills to hit level 30, so I can get all the skill achievements, which is about 8 achievements knocked off all at once. My reward for doing all this is I then get stuck having to speak to Car for 5 minutes, which is more time wasted since I can't skip it. And last but not least, we now have Malachor, which is essentially just playing through the story. So I simply start with killing every storm beast in sight, one for XP because I still need to level up, but also to make remote section a lot easier. Thanks to that, the remote section only takes me about 2 minutes before Goto then ambushes him. As a side note, I did complete all of Goto's quests, so I got all his credits from that, which is also a good thing for me to mention now, and it's also the only time Goto's ever useful. The story then plays out with Kreia wiping your entire team and Atton running off where he gets to fight Sion, and in this fight Atton actually loses, so I accept this and just proceed to just pretend that he died. Ironically, Atton's fighting spirit feat apparently kicked in on my PC itself because I ended up dying, so I had to go back to a previous save and do the entire planet again, which led to him winning his fight against Sion, so I guess he's going to live no matter what I do. Whilst running through the planet, I hit the section where you can save or kill your party members, and in a sickening act I choose to kill all my party members. I've never done this before and I don't think I'm ever going to do it again, there's just no tangible benefit. The bonus is it did max out my dark side points which I needed for another achievement, so that's always good. And it's also a good thing to mention that I also got the achievement for getting all dark side powers. As always, I move on to the Sion fight, which I find easier than Nihilus. That's just how the fights always go. However, I didn't get any experience from this, and then I realised one glaring problem. I hadn't reached level 30 yet, and I had no way of getting more XP. This meant if I'm going to have to get the level 30 achievement, I'm going to have to do it in my light side playthrough, which at this point I don't really have time to do. As always, Kreia is the weakest of the Sith trilogy, so I kill her pretty easily and get my dark side ending achievement. The total time it took me to do this, however, was about 15 hours, 3 hours over the allotted time. In this 15 hours, however, I did get 44 achievements and completed about 99% of quests, which meant the remaining achievements were mainly light side exclusive ones, meaning my second playthrough I could just focus on mopping them up. The only missable achievements I have left are HK47's description of how to kill a Jedi and his description of love. I also have to fix T3M4, reach level 30, and train Handmaiden, Mira, and Beodor as Jedis, and obviously mop up this few quests that I missed. And I have a total of 9 hours to get that done, and I think it's doable, but my god, it's going to be a very close call. In my light side run, I decide to make myself Space Jesus because only the divine intervention is going to get me through this run unscathed. Luckily for me, I don't have to do the tutorial this time, and I can basically zoom through Peragus. The only thing I have to make sure I get done is I have to get the Sith to shoot the asteroids to get that achievement. On Telos, I also have to side with the Euphorians. I also think this is a slightly faster route, so that will also be some time saved, and I've also sadly got to slog through the droid section instead of just wall breaching because I said no exploits and rules are rules. Overall, Peragus and Telos has taken me about 2.5 hours to do, which means I've got about 6.5 to complete all the other planets and finish off Malachor, so I think it's very doable, but I also think it's going to be quite a crunch when it comes to the levels and maybe the time. I start with Korriban because I think it's the quickest planet, and I just flawless through the Sith Academy as usual. I do grab the thorium charges so I can unlock the Dxun cache, which is what I needed to do last time, and I just play through the map as normal. For some reason, my infinite wisdom, I decided to do the tomb for XP, but I got battered and just kept getting endless dark side points. I don't even think I got any experience that was worth it, so it was just a giant waste of time. I then switched over to Dantooine to mop up some quests I haven't done, so I do Dopak's quest, and I also get Beodor bugging out instead of doing influence, so I lost 15 minutes to go back and get his influence checks done. I continued the cave after getting the influence. I brought T3 and Beodor, and the giant Kinrath was hitting for about 60 damage and just killing everyone, which really dragged out the time even more, but I did bring T3 for upgrades and to start his achievement by fixing him up a bit. Dantooine just plays out like normal. I worked my way through the enclave, returning back to the Kinrath cave. I then find Conquest once again, and I turned down his offer. I also then waste a lot of time saving Kunda, which really didn't help. Also during this, I got enough parts to fix up HK47, and my plan was to get low influence in order to get all his dialogues. However, the first thing I did was trigger influence, so clearly my love for him outshined any achievement I want, so I decide I'm just going to take the dark side point hits with him and just get his influence up. I decide next to go to Nar Shaddaa, since I know if I'm going to lose time it's going to be here, and the first thing I do is let T3 flirt with this other droid, which is an instant waste of time on my part. I then do the refugee sector in order to trigger the red eclipse scenes, and then I just clear out the red eclipse as usual, and once I've done that I decide to prestige into a Jedi Watchman. The next thing I did was convert Handmaiden to a Jedi. This then got me one more achievement. After that I converted Be'odor to a Jedi, which just left Mira to be converted so I could tick off all the Jedi conversions. Also, I had this weird scene where Atton walked in on the Handmaiden, but my exile was also just stood there really awkwardly, so I've just assumed this version of the exile has severe autism.
This isn't some pleasure yacht. This isn't some pleasure yacht.
This isn't some pleasure yacht.
However, in the Nar Shaddaa docks, I finish off the Odis quest for some light side points, and it finishes off one of my last remaining side quests. Since I'm light side, Mira will become my companion for this, and also obviously Jedi conversion. This might surprise you, but I once again picked T3 and HK as the people to save me on the yacht. HK because he'll stop the other HK droids loading in, which obviously saved me some time, but also T3 is unironically one of my best units in this run, so I've got to bring him along. When saving my exile though, I have this weird glitch with the droids, which obviously wastes even more time, like I wasn't stressed enough over this, but I do escape the yacht as normal and go to the Jedi Master, who I want to kill for that mustache, but I have to let him go unfortunately. The next planet I move on to is Dxun. I used the thorium charges to blow open the cache because I didn't do that in my last run. I then go out of my way to kill the Zagreg for his ear, again another quest, and I then kill the Lost Mandalorian for HK influence, and that also rounds off one of the last quests I failed to do in my first run. Also at this point, HK47 told me how to kill a Jedi, but then I saw one of the most disgusting things in my life. I saw HK47 with a light side background, and honestly, it's disgusting. Honestly, worse than killing all my party members was earlier. But with this, I have one more achievement ticked off, and I just have to go to Onderon. Sadly for me, I have to take Mira because I need more influence points to make her a Jedi, but luckily for me, I only have to do the main quest, which takes me about 20 to 25 minutes because I know exactly what I'm doing, so it's just sprinting back and forth for a while. Once that's all done, I have to go back to Nar Shaddaa just so I can get Mira ticked off as a Jedi, which then means I've converted all my companions to Jedis at least once, which means all I have to do is get the last remaining achievements. For the Dxun tomb, I sent Be'odor, Handmaiden and HK47 just because they're my strongest and can get it done the quickest. For the palace, I bring T3 because I might need his computer skills at some points, and I also think he's one of my best units now. Before finishing off the palace though, I do the puzzle quest to get into the storage room where all the treasures were actually completely useless, and this storage room also has a bed in it for some reason. After beating that clue though, I then pretend that I want him spared so I can give some light side illusion before the Queen has him killed via a firing squad. This means I get the achievement for siding with the Queen, and I have one last conversation with Kavar before we both have to go back to the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine. At this point, it just kind of plays out like normal. I unlock the last Force power I need, Force Enlightenment, to get the final light side power for one more achievement. Visas tells me how she's mentally unstable and jealous of how much time I spent with another woman, so naturally I decide to indulge her in her extracurricular activities.
This isn't some pleasure yacht.
That is the safe way of putting it. The Handmaiden duel went a lot easier than last time because this time she's actually leveled since she's meant to be in my party on this run. Atton also weirdly gets jealous of me and Mira on Telos, and I don't know why he said this. I've also never seen him ever say it before, so this was a kind of new experience, so I thought I'd just chuck this in there for you.
I heard you making friends with the bounty hunter. I don't blame you. She's a scrapper.
I also end up maxing out my light side points, so that is another achievement ticked off. And in the Ravager, I decide I'm going to claim the most useless force power in the game, which is just Beast Confusion. I've never claimed it before, but I decided why not since I've got spare force powers going around. I once again bump into Make Onderon great again man, but this time instead of killing him, I gaslight him into killing himself for us for the greater good, aka for Onderon. This is, however, the easiest fight I've ever had with Nihilus, purely because of how high my wisdom is. I just freeze him in place and we just batter him, and I just keep refreezing him for ages. I can't lie, the fight was done in about a minute to 30 seconds. It was genuinely the best run I've ever had fighting him, which was great because I needed to make up time. However, we're now back to Malachor, and I actually decide to use Beast Control on some Storm Beasts to see them fight each other for a bit of fun, and I also make friends with the giant Storm Beast, which was kind of cool. I mean, I'm just stood there with him, before I decide his reward for being so kind is to die. The companion sections play out as usual. Mira versus Honhar is obviously ridiculously easy, and Atton versus Scion seems to go very well, which is surprising considering I hadn't built Atton. For some reason, Scion kind of bugged out and would only use saber throw, so I just shot him until he died. I did end up dying a few times because I was just being a bit careless, but on my run through the academy, I do go out of my way to save my companions for a bit more light side points. Scion, ironically, becomes the hardest fight of all the Sith for a change because I can't stun him like I do for everyone else, he's simply immune to it, so that was kind of a bit more difficult than I'd like. Don't get me wrong, I still gaslit him into killing himself, but it was a surprise that I couldn't stun him like you can stun Nihilus and Kreia. And that spoiler is exactly how the Kreia fight went. I just froze her in place and then just kept hitting her like I did to Nihilus. It was stupidly easy, and when she spawned the lightsabers, you can also freeze those in place and just keep hitting them or keep hitting her. It's quite an easy fight. It's a little upsetting now I've realised how easy these fights can be. And I also remember as a kid really struggling with all these fights. It's really upsetting to realise how easy this game could have been if I knew how to build characters when I was just 4 or 5 years old. But with Kreia defeated, did I 100% KOTOR 2 in 24 hours? No, I did not. I wasn't even close, actually. It took me around 28 hours to finish all of this. The exact point of when I failed, I was on Onderon when I hit the 24-hour mark. And to make it worse, I'd even 100% it, I still missed 3 achievements. One of them being Cupid's Rifle, which was one of the achievements that made me want to do this run in the first place, so I'd get the achievement. I also, unsurprisingly, failed at reaching level 30. Both my runs I got to the same level, so it was just poor planning on my part. The final achievement I didn't get was fixing T3M4, because I didn't have the right computer use skill. That was upsetting because I was about 1000 XP from leveling up, so I could boost that skill into doing it. So again, that was just poor planning from my part. So yes, I guess I failed the challenge, so you all get to point and laugh at me now. But I also think this challenge is definitely doable. Like, I lost time making notes for the video and just general miscellaneous stuff that I easily could have cut from this. Also, if I reached level 30 on my dark side just by bringing Kreia with me on some few missions, I would have easily achieved some of the achievements and saved a lot of time, so that again is on my part. But what do you guys think of the challenge? Do you think it's doable? Have you ever tried to do something like this yourself? I'd love to know in the comments. Please like and subscribe if you like this video, and I will see you all next time. Take care.